Hello, everyone. We're gonna start in about a minute. Okay, Tim, I think we can start.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Great to see some familiar faces here. Some familiar names, I should say. I'm very excited to speak on this topic, and we have a few more people just like coming in right now. So welcome as you enter. So I'd like to first off welcome everyone to speak to hear us speak about the Canada Life Capacity Building Program, designed for nonprofits and charities across Canada. It's a program all about strengthening organizations, investing in leadership, and building governance and operational excellence in your organization. So, my name is Tim Richardson. I'm the Director of Standards and Accreditation at Imagine Canada. I'm joined today by Christina Andoni. She's the Manager of Accreditation and Communications and Partnerships. And then Danielle Houston is also here. She's a coordinator of the standards program here. And she works more directly with organizations going through the accreditation process and supporting them as they work with the standards. Um, we are also going to be speaking with some members of Canada Life also during this conversation. So we will introduce those folks later when we speak with them. So Canada Life, for those who are not familiar or at this point would have been through this program, but Canada Life has been a major supporter of the Imagine Canada standards since the very beginning of the standards program when it was founded around 2012. They've been a major funding partner throughout that process, helping us put money and time into growing and in improving the value of our offering and the importance of accreditation and developing the standards themselves. So we're super grateful for their partnership and this new level of this partnership we've reached where we actually work with them to include more organizations in the accreditation process. So last year was our very first implementation of the program, and it was far out exceeded our expectations in terms of interest. And we were able to work with Canada Life to increase the amount of organizations that we could accept from that process. So yeah, we're super excited to run this again with them. Um, so before we jump in, you can leave questions in the chat box in either the Q&A feature or just straight in the chat, whichever you prefer, and we'll get to them likely at the end, maybe some as they come up if they're super, time sensitive. We will record this presentation. It'll be available afterwards on YouTube. And we'll also send you the slides. Um, so if you are willing and able, please feel free to share where you're calling in from in the chat, where in Canada you're based, or outside Canada even. I'd love to hear from you about your location and yeah, and just hear where everyone's calling in from. So as for where we're calling in from, I'd like to move on to the slide with the land acknowledgement text. So, we're Imagine Canada is a very we're quite a diverse group in terms of location. We're based all across Canada. We used to be more kind of Toronto-centric, but we went remote during the start of COVID and we never went back to a kind of a full-time office. And that's allowed us to sort of appear and work across Canada in all sorts of locations. And it's been useful in terms of being embedded in communities across Canada. But of course, that does change the nature of the land acknowledgement, but we still do have a physical head office, which we refer to. And as it happens, I'm on the same territories as that office. So I'll speak to that location. Where our staff operations and work and network depend on traditional Indigenous territories to provide us physical space, sustenance, safety, and community to work, live, and play. Our physical head office is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat. We acknowledge that these lands are covered by Treaty 13 and the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. We acknowledge that these lands are still home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Okay, so a little about our agenda. So we're going to start off with a little bit about the Imagine Canada standards. We're going to move into the Canada Life Capacity Building Program, the details of this program, and then a sort of brief overview of the accreditation process itself, followed by a Q&A. And we believe there will be time for all of that. And thank you for everyone for putting your locations in. It's great to see some Winnipeggers. I'm often in Winnipeg visiting my in-laws. But of course, Halifax I see BC Interior, some Ontario, Calgary, Charlottetown. Lots of Winnipeg. Wow, lots of Winnipeg. Welcome, Winnipeggers. I may have a bias there. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about, first of all, kind of like an open question for the group. I think there's a poll that should appear in people's screens any second.
Sorry, Tim,
Okay.
actually, we decided to do this question via chat. So we'll ask you the question verbally here and then ask you to put your response in the chat and we'll read those out for you. So what actions or practices by a charity or nonprofit make you view them as trustworthy? So take a moment to think about that question and place your response in the chat. Great. So we have some responses coming in. We have annual audits, transparency and communication, consistency, audited financials, documentation, another for audits, reports to the community, publicly available financial statements. I'm seeing some consistency there. An annual general meeting to all, transparency, governance, leadership, diversified revenue streams, clear communication, good governance standards as evidenced by transparency, communication, public posting of material. Wonderful. Social media presence, annual reviews, transparency, and good communication.
Yeah, thank you everyone for that. As you can see, there's some consensus, but there's also quite a bit of diversity in these responses. There's a lot required to kind of convey trust to folks, and that ranges from everything from communication to governance to things that aren't visible. The overall sense of transparency of knowing the organization you're dealing with and being able to see into it in some way. Um, yeah, this is great to see in it, and it's a bit of a spoiler warning for some of our standards later we'll cover in this meeting. Um, and so Imagine Canada itself, as an organization, works to build a Canada where nonprofits are trusted, well governed, and seen as essential partners. Um, so the Imagine Canada standards were established in 2012 in full consultation with the nonprofit sector. Um, and they kind of combined many existing programs and codes and things into a single platform that had all the organizations and all the standards within them. And so some organizations got accredited right at the beginning under those standards. The standards have changed over time, but since the very beginning, they've been separated into five core areas, which include board governance, financial transparency, fundraising, staff management, and volunteer involvement. The largest section you'll see later is the board governance one that kind of covers a lot of ground, and the other four are kind of around the same size in terms of the number of standards. So speaking a little bit about why organizations get accredited, maybe some of these reasons are the reasons that you're here in this meeting today. Um, but um, some of the benefits include, well, organizations are of different sizes and missions. Um, there's a great amount of variety in. Oh, sorry, and I'm not sure if we're on the right slide here. Well, I think we're still on the Imagine Canada slide. There we go. Perfect. Oh, okay. Okay, I think I may have skipped a slide mentally here. So this is some of the services that we offer at Imagine Canada. So you've got the Imagine Canada standards at the top left there. Grant Connect is quite a popular service we have that connects funders with fundees. So you're able to look through a kind of set of organizations on Grant Connect there, and filter a variety of foundations and funders by their mission area, their cause area, their connection to location, and find the right funding for you. Prism is our community impact network. That's for corporate funding. HR Intervals is an HR resource hub for nonprofits who often don't have that kind of dedicated capacity for HR, giving those additional resources. We have membership. We have the Canadian Centre for Nonprofit Digital Resilience, and we also are known for our public policy and advocacy work, and that connects us all with research and foresight. So, conducting surveys and conducting reports and publishing reports on different trends in the sector. Yeah, so to speak about the benefits of accreditation. So we tend to put this into sort of two key headings, which is strengthening performance and operations on one hand, and then demonstrating credibility and demonstrating sector leadership on the other. So one is the sort of internal transformative aspect of the work, and the other is demonstrating credibility. So the external kind of the perception changes. And a large part of the standards program came about when there were kind of a lot of stories, as there have been recently as well, about nonprofit misconduct. It could be a CEO or a board member or something like that who has done something controversial or possibly illegal. And this can create this perception about nonprofits that all nonprofits are in the same boat. In the same way that perhaps you might have seen kind of the discourse change around politicians, where there's now this kind of view that every single politician is selfish and in it for themselves. There was this risk, this felt risk, that nonprofits and charities, despite the huge amount of trust they have from the Canadian public, could, with the sort of bad press and bad publicity, without some sort of countervailing force, might begin to be perceived in that way as well. So there is this need to sort of come together and say, no, we actually, not only are we trustworthy, but we also go above and beyond the minimum requirements that are needed, and we are can be exemplary of those requirements. The kind of the actual accreditation process isn't just about showing that you do those things, but actually doing those things. So some organizations may be coming to this with already a ton of measures in place. They might already be totally compliant with tons of the standards, but there is a lot of change involved in the process for some organizations. So we're a big fan of the hard work and the real work of actually changing the organization, having sort of sometimes tough and conversations with board members that drive clarity, and drive change at organizations. So it's a very powerful process, and one that we're excited to help organizations go through. So in terms of like the concrete benefits, like kind of like segmenting that out a bit, we have a few listed here. So strengthening governance, we've talked about a little bit. We've talked about building accountability, building boards. Board members often exist in a state. Formerly to being at Imagine Canada, I was the executive director of a charity called Project Canoe, and I've been involved in many boards throughout my career. And there is always this sort of like sense of slight nagging guilt that you're not doing what you should be doing. And this can be that sort of fiduciary responsibility combined with the high responsibility of a leadership can combine for quite a intense experience, one that's quite racked with guilt, but also the sense of importance and meaningfulness. So, strengthening those governance mechanisms, getting super clear about what those priority policies are, can be super useful for organizations and mitigate risk. You've got managing risk, which is, having in advance some of those policies and processes in place that reduce risk, as you'll see from some of the standards, which involve like conflicts of interest, HR policies, transparency around finances. Some of those things are just kind of always in the ether in the back of your head, come forward and sort of help organizations organize those things. And then overall, there's this kind of shift from the reactive crisis management to leading practices. So there can be a big shift there when when you have these things lined up, when you're no longer worried about the day to day or the legal compliance or these kind of like fundamental issues, you're able to kind of shift the board's focus from this kind of we should be doing governance because it's important and people keep saying we should do it, to kind of a more expansive or generative place where you think about how can we do this best. And then on the other side, in the sort of like external picture here, when it comes to kind of external pieces and benefits of accreditation, the demonstrating credibility. So demonstrating leadership, we see a lot of organizations who really see the work of transforming their organization and becoming exemplary as also the work of transforming the sector and taking on a sort of leadership role in terms of practices and processes. So that's a massive piece. Around attracting resources, this can refer to donations, like larger donors, larger donations. So, we have research that indicates that individuals will give greater amounts to organizations that are accredited. When deciding between an accredited and non-accredited organizations, they'll give around 10% higher. So it can influence the size of donations. We also know that awareness of accreditation is higher among larger donors and more high information donors. So folks from, for example, the PRISM Corporate Grant Making Network, donor advisors and sort of funders are more likely to have awareness of accreditation than your average sort of general monthly donor or occasional donor. And so there is this kind of leveling up that you can have in the perceptions of those types of donors, which can lead to greater donor acquisition. And then we're seeing in terms of donor acquisition that AI is doing a huge is beginning to sort of move web traffic in a much more important way than just Google searching used to. And that can show up both in sort of the behavior of individual donors who are seeking what's your organization, can I trust? But it can also show up in the creation of the sort of new applications, a new wave of applications that are coming about from kind of coding, from like the powers of things like Claude Code. We see that in these systems that if you go and ask with no open a fresh browser and ask how to tell which Canadian charities to trust, you'll see a ton of references to Imagine Canada in there and to the standards. So as these systems begin to make greater use of AI and that wider context, there will be more in there about the standards and accreditation. And that's obviously going to be a huge part of donor acquisition in the coming years. And I didn't mention sort of talent retention and staff well-being. We've seen that be a major driver of a high net promoter score among employees and an indicator in retention. Okay. So just to mention we are the only Canadian nonprofit accreditation body that accredits nonprofits and charities across all of Canada in their capacity as nonprofits and charities. So we're mainly focused on the sort of larger the needs of all nonprofits and charities. So there are many accrediting bodies that kind of accredit subgroups within those, like healthcare charities, for instance. But we're focused on kind of nonprofits in their capacity as nonprofits. So you can see that we have, representation across every province in Canada, and across a huge variety of sectors as well. Next up, we've got a few kind of leading some of the organizations that we have accredited, and you'll see a kind of a huge variety there in terms of cause area and some recognizable brands as well. Okay, so just speaking a little bit more about our team, this is, we make use of the full Imagine Canada team at different times for different projects, but in terms of the core team that focus on the standards and accreditation itself, we have a list here of those folks, some of whom are on the call and some of whom you would work with if you go through this process. So I'll just mention, I mentioned Christina and Danielle already. Maybe I'll just flag that we have quite a few bilingual staff members here. Kat, Julie, Gianaba, Christina are all bilingual and work with clients. And Holly, I'll also just flag because she's working on some of our standards development work and research that we have on kind of updating the standards and changing them over time to modernize them and to kind of open up to new areas of excellence in nonprofits. Okay, so I think with that said, I don't know if there's been any questions that we should pause for there. Feel free to throw any in, but I will hand over to Christina here for the next step.
Thanks, Tim. So we're going to jump into what the Canada Life Capacity Building Program is about. And just to say that we mentioned it was launched for the first time last year. So we did a sort of pilot. We learned some lessons last year and we had a lot of interest. So we are very excited to be offering it this year as well. And the program exists to help organizations like yours take governance and operational excellence to the next level. And it is more than just funding. It is about reducing barriers to accreditation and connecting organizations in a network across the country with organizations that are similar in their commitment to upholding to the highest standards in our sector, to strong governance, and to sustain impact. So the main objectives of the program, why we wanted to create this program, is to make it, of course, accreditation more accessible to organizations of all sizes across the country, but also to strengthen the charitable and nonprofit sector because the sector is as strong as each organization individually. So all of that is necessary to sustain public trust and build capacity of organizations and increase resilience of the sector overall. So who is the program intended to? So it is open to charities and nonprofit organizations across Canada, to all the registered charities and nonprofit organizations across Canada. And we encourage especially applications from organizations that are led by or serve Black and racialized communities, because we want the program to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in strengthening the nonprofit sector. Of course, to ensure fairness and the integrity of the program, we want to make sure that organizations that already have submitted their application for peer review after the program has been announced, which was February 10th, they are not eligible for the program. So in terms of participant benefits, what does it exactly mean for organizations? Organizations receive access to the Imagine Canada standards community that includes access to the application platform where the organizations can work on the application at their own pace. It is a roadmap to governance and operational excellence. The fees, which are normally monthly fees that organizations pay for the standards community, are covered by Canada Life, as well as the application process fee. Organizations take on, when they get successfully accredited, they take on the license fees, which are annual fees paid by the organizations. And in the next slide, we will be presenting a little bit more detailed information about fees. But Danielle, you can stay still on on the previous slide. just to wrap up in terms of participant benefits, something that we really sets us apart and what we are proud of is our personalized support. We have program leads that support organizations throughout their accreditation journeys. So organizations are not there by themselves. There is somebody dedicated from the team that supports the organizations throughout, may it be by answering questions, clarifications, directing organizations sometimes to find the necessary resources or templates or find information that is necessary. Also, we provide the opportunity to connect with other organizations, perhaps similar to organizations like yours that have gone already through the accreditation process, but are volunteering to provide mentorship to organizations that are going through the process. They can be organizations that are in your sector or subsector. So our team really tries to find organizations and match them according to your own. And this is something that is we are very grateful for our volunteers in that sense. And all of that is to promote a networked approach where organizations can share best practices among each other, and have also access to resources. And we provide complementary tools, not just the free, of course, tool, the gap analysis tool that is accessible for all organizations on the website, which is a list of standards and standard requirements, but also we provide other resources to our accredited or organizations that go through the accreditation process designed specifically for them. So we can maybe touch upon the accreditation fees a little bit more in detail, as you can see here, and also you can go into the link provided, and we'll be sending all the slides to all the organizations with all the links included. But this information is also provided on our website if you want to look at it at your own pace. As we have mentioned, the standards community fees and the one-time application fee, these are the fees covered by Canada Life with their generous support. And then the annual license fee is paid by the organizations themselves. And yeah, accessibility is very important to us, and we constantly work to making accreditation as affordable as possible to organizations, and our tiered system allows that. In terms of application process and timeline, so what are the steps of applying for the Canada Life Capacity Building Program? As most of you are probably aware already, we have launched the Stage 1 application, which is live, and the deadline for that is March 27th, where we ask organization to submit a very short form that includes their basic information and a short motivational letter of 500 words, explaining why seeking accreditation at this stage is important for the organization. We want to assess eligibility at this stage, and all the eligible organizations move on into the second stage of the application, which we will assess applications based on several criteria. I have alluded to equity and inclusion criteria previously, which are very important to us, but we'll also look at the rationale and how each organization intends to approach the accreditation process. So it will provide us with a little bit more insights into what are the next steps that the organization considers in terms of accreditation. So it will help us assess, in that sense, the application. We will have a mixed committee formed from representatives of Imagine Canada standards team, as well as Canada Life at this stage. And based on those criteria, selected organizations will be notified. And the next stage of organizations that have been selected is the provision of an engagement letter. It is a letter that we require to be signed by the board of directors and the highest position staff of the organization, usually the executive director, by which the both parties acknowledge that the program is being understood, that the timeline is agreed to. And part of this agreement is that we require the grant itself, or the financial support of Canada Life is available for approximately 15 months, which is enough time to allow any organization to go through the accreditation process. Usually, it takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months to get accredited, according to the different organizations where they're at, depending on how prepared they are. So we do believe that we have very realistic timelines, and we are working very well with organizations to make sure that they fit into the deadlines. And as the final stage, we have the onboarding and the announcement of the results of the program. And the onboarding itself means that organizations receive login access to the application platform, the standards community, and then effectively in the fall, they can start working on their accreditation application. And just here is the accreditation process timeline, what usually to expect in the sense when the organization starts working on its application, what's next? When the application is finalized, it is submitted for internal peer review, for internal screening, sorry, that is done by the staff. There is a little bit of going back and forth sometimes, and staff provides feedback to improve the application so it has the maximum potential for going to the peer review, so that the application is very well prepared. And then the organization submits the application for peer review. Peer review happens. It is our it is our process that we rely on to ensure rigor of the program. Peer reviewers are independent volunteers that volunteer their time, sometimes for years, on the standards program to ensure its success. And they make sure that each organization that submits their application for review meets the conditions and the requirements of the standards. The Accreditation Decision Panel is a subcommittee of the Standards Council, which is the highest governance body of the standards, and this subcommittee finalizes the decisions. We have a public announcement where we celebrate all organizations that have successfully went through accreditation and reaccreditation 2 times per year. It is a wonderful achievement that we celebrate with organizations. And of course, it's a continuous improvement process. The accreditation itself, it's a transformational process for organizations. So it's the work continues after that. In terms of compliance, we ensure that standards are not that the standard requirements are not as heavy on organizational on the logistics side. That's why we have reviewed certain compliance processes for standards, and something that what to expect for organizations in the years that they get accredited for. There is a slide that is coming up, but that explains pretty much what the organization can expect in terms of compliance for the accreditation period. But we really do ensure that it's not as heavy on the organization, and we work together with organizations to ensure that it's as smooth of a process as possible. So in terms of timelines, when your organization right now is thinking about accreditation, is looking into program timelines, how that fits with your own timelines, we suggest you to take a look at the accreditation timelines. This is the timeline when the peer review panels happen, and all the associated other dates that need to happen so the application is ready to be submitted for peer review, so please consult that on the website and on the link provided. We have included all the dates there. It will help you orient a little bit into the accreditation process timelines and see where your organization might be positioned at approximately. That might change as organization starts working on their application, of course, but at least approximately we will figure out, and we would try to map a calendar for your organization in that sense. I have mentioned accreditation compliance, and this slide is just for informational purposes. Is just for organizations that have successfully went through accreditation in the sense that it provides information of what to expect in terms of compliance checks and reports. Accreditation is given successfully accredited organizations get a license to use the trust mark, the accreditation trust mark, for a period of 5 years. This is the period of the accreditation. And in year 1 and 3, there is a compliance check that happens, which the staff selects a number of standards that they check. They check the evidence for those standards themselves, so no action is required on the behalf of the organization. And in the year 2 and 4, a compliance report happens when, for a selection of standards, the organization submits the evidence for those standards. And in the 5th year, reaccreditation happens, which means that the organization provides evidence for all standards, and even for those standards that have changed maybe in the period of 5 years, because that might happen. All right. So in terms of confidentiality, it is worth mentioning that we take that very seriously and strongly at Imagine Canada. And as you can imagine, during the accreditation period, organizations can submit evidence and documents that can contain sensitive or private information. So all the peer reviewers and the Standards Council members and everybody involved in reviewing those documents are considering those documents as private information, so as confidential information. So that is something that is taken very seriously at Imagine Canada and used just for the sake of the process of accreditation process. And we, as well, at Imagine Canada, we recognize that each organization is unique, and there can be some special considerations needed. And in order to ensure the flexibility, we adapt to the reality of various organizations. That means that an organization can solicit a special consideration at the application stage if certain standards might not be applicable. For example, organizations that don't have volunteers, maybe certain standards related to volunteers engagement would not be applicable. It's just an example. And all the special considerations are granted by the Standards Council. Just to summarize, here are some useful links. There are shortcuts that you might find useful to get back to. Program announcement. This is the description of the capacity building program if you ever need to return to. It contains a lot of information that we've covered today, stages, and the requirements, as well as the link to the Canada Life Capacity Building Program application, where you can start working on that. We also provide the link to the gap analysis tool. This is a free Excel spreadsheet at this point, but it contains the list of all the standards and their requirements by level. And we do have three levels of requirements that are being asked for from organizations. And I will touch upon it in next slides. But there you can check all the evidence required for the standards. Also, here are the link to the upcoming submission deadlines in case you need to check when are the next peer review panels in 2027 happening, and where you could fit in or at least aim at. The Standards Community link, which is a resource hub that has free resources available for all organizations to use to learn more about the standards, to enhance their organizational practices and governance practices. And also further on, the organizations that are going to be accepted into the program are going to have access to the standards community to a wider range of resources that are available there. And yes, please subscribe to our newsletter. You can unsubscribe at any time, but it is delivered every quarter, and you can keep in touch with all the other initiatives that we have. And you can also consider subscribing to other newsletters at Imagine Canada. They are very appreciated by the sector overall. And to sum up some practical tips for all organizations thinking about applying is yeah, be very intentional and clear about what you would like to achieve with accreditation. We recommend that you start early. Please use the gap analysis tool. It's a very useful tool, and even those organizations that will decide not to get accredited or maybe not apply even to this program, it can be a wonderful tool to just check what are the best practices that have been developed by the sector for the sector. So it's a great capacity building tool. You can check, of course, the program and the accreditation timelines and assess how this aligns with your own. And in the other slide, yeah, we mentioned that, yes, please take this opportunity to your board, talk to your board, present it to the board. And we are asked sometimes to also participate in those presentations. So if you ever need our help or to send additional information, additional slides that maybe are more specifically targeted to the board, we can do that. So please reach out to us in that sense. And yeah, make sure that your submissions are complete and that they follow the deadlines for each stage. So yeah, this slide will be provided as a reference point. It also exists on the website, and is to differentiate between the levels according to which the standards requirements are being determined for each organization, and we do that based on the number of employees and the average of the 3 years of annual expenses. And depending on that, for example, level 3 includes and is applied to larger organizations with more than 50 of staff and more than 10 million in revenue. And that includes the 73 standards. So all standards are applied to level 3, and then not all standards are applied to level 2 and level 1. So depending where your organization fits, you would be determining what standards would apply to your organization and what requirements apply to that as well. So I think we are done with that part of the portion of the presentation, and we are open to any questions that you might have. You
Yeah,
can drop them in. Yeah.
I just wanted to say a couple more things before feel free to write your questions now if you have. Listening to all that, there is quite a lot of information there, and I can imagine that some of you are kind of overwhelmed hearing some of that with the amount of kind of dates and systems and levels and things. But I think fundamentally, like um, reviewing the gap analysis tool and taking a look at where your organization is and seeing what practices are part of the standards program is a really concrete step to do as an organization. And it can really show you whether where the work would be, how much work there is. Just highlighting that if it's feeling like a bit overwhelming, like a lot of this can wait until later. And the main question is to ask is, does the board, can we make a case for this to the board? What do we need to do that? And like, how much work would this be? And is it work that we are already planning to do or that we'd like to do anyway? So, yeah, just hopefully if that sort of calms anyone's stress, potentially some of the information there, because we did give you quite a lot of information. So we do have some questions coming, and maybe Danielle, if you could be the question relayer / answerer if an answer comes to your mind right away.
For sure. So for how long will the accreditation be funded by Canada Life? I believe, Christina, you mentioned this cohort would be offered 15 months of access to having the application fee waived. Of course, you can continue to work on your application following that 15 months, and the 15 months of offered materials and resources are all there, including staff support. And I believe there will be future cohorts, of course, if these are successful, but this is the current one. Is it course-based or is it purely a review process? It's a really good question. I don't know how to answer that one. Tim,
Yeah.
do you have thoughts on that?
I think yeah, it's not purely a review, but it isn't there isn't like a course a lot of organizations will either dedicate someone in their team or have a part of someone's work be, or even have an external consultant support this work. Um, and so there isn't sort of an educational piece like integrated into the course, but we are like very supportive in terms of the resources, templates, and the sort of hands-on support that staff will provide. Every organization going through the process has an organization lead from the staff side, so you'd be connected with them. And the kind of implementation of the standards, is somewhat self-directed with lots of support. So there's a lot of materials and resources and guides out there you can access and we can connect you with as well. Um, and yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. I'm just going to jump right to it because I think there's a question here around the size. Um, Yes. The answer to, sorry, CNA events, just to answer your question around the size, being a very small organization compared to the levels. Yeah, we do have organizations accredited that are, where level one seems very high, organizations with an entirely volunteer run, when they have, maybe they have one paid staff member, some even have no paid staff members. And that does pose some challenges to get accredited because you don't necessarily have like the capacity to do some of these things. But there is, in terms of the centralization of things, in terms of there being fewer departments, yeah, and fewer departments to trade off between, there can be some things that are a little easier for smaller organizations because it's maybe just a board and kind of volunteers are supporting it. So there, it's definitely accessible. But in terms of being not ready yet, I think the gap analysis tool is, as Christina alluded to, is a really like powerful way of kind of like seeing what you might want to work on and then incrementally working towards these things. So let's say you want to focus on governance in 2026 and maybe your volunteer management policies in 2027. Then that could be the way for you to go about this. You could apply for the accelerator with that in mind. And just be transparent about the fact that you don't think you'd be applying for peer review in 20 within the timeline, and we would be able to like just assess based on who that may be possible. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you and see how that goes.
We have a question from Donna. If we are not ready yet to apply for accreditation, can we join the standards community to get access to sample policies and other resources? I can tackle that on. Yes, absolutely. The standards community is free. There is a lot of resources already there. So you will see you can learn about the kind of the why behind the standards and dig into third-party resources that are available there. And most of accessibility is very important in Imagine Canada, and most of our resources are available for free. And of course, we have some other resources that we share with other accredited organizations only, or the ones that are working on accreditation, but it's a wonderful tool that we encourage you to use.
I think just going back to that question, there was another question here: what resources can we access without submitting? Which is, I think, similar to the one you just read, Christina. I think we've said it a few times, but the gap analysis tool is a really useful guide because even without having access to that full application, it really just gives you the information that is in the full application, including what the standard is and what the requirement is. So you can use that as kind of a guide for your organization that you may not be able to meet all of them, but you can use that as a guide to see where you stand currently and where you would like to be going, even if you're not ready yet to pursue accreditation.
Yeah, I also mentioned this was an earlier slide, but the other resources would include, Imagine Canada staff support and the possibility of a peer advisor, a volunteer we could connect you with to help you through the process. Those are other parts of being in the standards community. A database for grants. Oh, so Grant Connect is not, well, actually, two-part answer. So Grant Connect is the sort of grant seeking database that I mentioned. It's very powerful and it's got some new features, including some AI features that are pretty powerful in terms of finding the right fit for your organization. And it's a paid subscription. But you can access it for free in certain libraries. So we have a community edition, which is available in libraries across Canada. And I made use of that when I was an ED prior to coming to Imagine Canada, and it definitely helped a lot in finding some new funding sources. And we got some grants just from the Grant Connect Library Edition, which which we couldn't afford in that organization, the subscription. So definitely recommend looking at Grant Connect.
And I think they also offer a trial version for a limited number of days or hours. I don't remember exactly, but it can also be something that you could look into.
Great. I don't see any more questions in the chat. If there's anyone who has any remaining questions, we'll give you a few seconds there for you to enter them in, and then we can end a few minutes early.
And you can email us anytime at standards@imaginecanada.ca to reach the team. We can all read that there. Give us a call, and happy to talk through any aspect of this and any questions about the process or the capacity building program or anything like that. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and be in touch. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.